Welcome to another episode of Investing in Intellectual Property with Dave. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has created an apparatus that turns air into water. Let me say that again for those of you who may not have been paying attention. This gentleman has created an apparatus that turns air into water. And it's been so successful that it is currently sold out. Please help me welcome Cody Sudin. How's it going, Cody?
Hey, David, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. I've been excited for this one. I know we're going to have some logistical challenges, but I'm excited for this one for a number of reasons. So in terms of just getting started, and I want to bring up, as you were describing, because I was going to ask you to describe the product, and as you're describing it, I have this, I think you have it on a picture in the background as well, of this video from your guys' website. As you're describing the product for the audience members to know, okay, talking about this apparatus that turns air into water. What is this thing? How does it work? So I was going to see if you can go over that a little bit.
Yeah, happy to. I'd love to. So this is our flagship model, Carapure. And just to give you a brief history, I've worked on this for 13 years now, and it really went to market 10 years after me starting this. So 3 years ago is when we first started selling. And I learned about it from a little beetle that condenses water on its shell in the desert, and it drinks the water off its own back. And when I saw that, I was like, well, if this little beetle can make water from the air using its shell in the desert, we can do the same thing. So I started to study the shell of the beetle. I replicated that function, and then we're able to package it into this beautiful design that's Carapure. And yeah, like you said, we're sold out now.
Man, that's amazing. And I guess let me kind of bring it back on us here. So was it any, from a challenging standpoint, I guess you think of, okay, cars and they can run off water as opposed to gasoline. Did you have people who just kind of doubted it? Because the beetle, that example, and it was interesting because I had a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dave Smith on the podcast several months ago, and he has his Q collar that essentially kind of protects your head versus kind of brain injuries and concussions. And it's worn by a number of like NFL players and just players who are in professional sports who, it's a contact sport, NHL, NFL, lacrosse, things like that. But the interesting thing was, and the reason I'm telling this story is because it's kind of similar to the beetle story where he got his ideal that kind of led to him kind of solving the issue from a woodpecker, kind of just knocking his head consistently into a tree over the course of his life and not, suffering concussions and things like that. So by him being able to figure that out, that kind of led to the invention of the Q collar. So I guess it's interesting because it seems like your invention is similar, where just being able to figure out how the beetle survives in the desert by, being able to still have water ultimately led to the invention of your apparatus, which I don't know, maybe that's a thing where, people need to start looking at just nature and kind of see how they solve issues and kind of lead that to some of the issues that we have going on. So I guess maybe kind of moving along from that, I know you said when you grew up, I was listening to another video that you had well water that maybe wasn't maybe the healthiest. And I would imagine that was as you were growing up. So was that something that was always in the back of your head? Because it seemed like that was maybe many years ago from, I guess, you finding out about the beetle and kind of seeing how, I guess, that whole thing that led to this invention. So was that kind of growing up with the well water, that example, was that something that was in the back of your head, or was that like a big part of you wanting to do something like this in terms of creating a machine that turns air into water?
Yeah. And just to go back to what you mentioned about the guy who made the concussion apparatus, the study is called biomimicry. I don't know if you knew that name, but that's what it means. So it's the study of nature and replicating its function, so mimicking its function. And that's the exact study that that is about this beetle. It's biomimicry. And we always say, nature has been around longer than we have, and they've solved a lot of problems more than, that we haven't solved yet. And if we just paid attention to what they were doing, we could solve a lot of our problems in this world. I mean, just to give you a quick example, do you know how like oysters and shells, like shell animals, they don't overgrow as sand continues to bond to their shell, right? But you never think about how is it so smooth? How is it such a beautiful shape? Yep. They actually release like a protein called TCP, and that TCP keeps the shell smooth. It forms it. They were able to replicate TCP and use it as a descaler in water mains to keep the water mains clean from scaling. And nature had already solved it, and we were trying chemicals and all these other things to put into our water mains when you can just replicate a natural protein, right? It's the same concept. And I thought that was a beautiful study, and there's so much more we can do there. So that's really cool. I never really thought about it. It really comes down to just observation, right? Like you just observe something, you're like, how can we use that? Right? He just observed a woodpecker. I just observed a beetle. I was like, if they can do it, so can we, and we could probably do it better because we're a little bit smarter, I hope.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and again, I think, and I maybe didn't mention this at the beginning, but like a whole part, and I know you and I talked offline a while ago, but the whole part of the podcast here is being able to kind of bring people on who have created something, invented something, built a business around their invention, and then just kind of being able to go forth and kind of sell it and continue to invent and create and things like that. And I think it's so many people out there maybe that they don't know what to do. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and he was successful at kind of creating an invention and kind of bringing it to market and things like that. But he actually worked for a corporation, so he knew a lot about the whole patent side of things, and from doing it from a corporate standpoint. But just it can be, I would imagine that it's overwhelming from
totally overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I went to school to study architecture. I'm not an engineer. So for me, the 10 years that I took to get to where we were able to launch, that was a learning period for me. And I had a podcast the other day, and it was like, it was about a word. And the word for me was like commitment. And it was an unwavering commitment to this idea. And not for nothing, like, even though I grew up with well water that had bacteria in it and it affected our family's health and so on and so forth, it's part of the story, but I wouldn't say it was driving force. I just had this commitment to develop something I thought would help other people that was good for the world, right? And I wanted to make an impact somehow. It wasn't about me, it was about what can I do with what I just learned. And I observed something, I was like, this is cool, what can I do with this? And then I was like, well, it actually solves my own problem too, right? So I put that to a goal then. Like I'm very goal driven, kind of very, like I said, goal oriented. And a lot of people, the saying, a goal without a plan is just a dream, right? Yeah. So once you have a goal in mind, you got to make a plan to achieve it. And that plan is impossible to figure out up front. It's extremely impossible, but you got to keep going, and it'll start to become clear as you do it, right? It took me 10 years, but I just didn't give up. I worked my day job as an architect. I traveled the world while I was working as an architect. I was very good at what I did, and I just worked nights and weekends. I mean, I got a tattoo just to commemorate the nights and weekends that I spent on this for 10 years. There was a time I spent 2 years living in a basement at my cousin's house in Brooklyn because I quit my job. I saved up enough money finally to quit my job and go full time on this. I didn't do anything, nothing. I didn't travel. I didn't see friends. I just worked. I was like that hardcore entrepreneur, like just commit, no weekends, no holidays, no birthdays, blah, 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 the ET life, right? But I don't promote that anymore because you do got to have some balance in your life, because if you go too far, it's hard to come back. But if you got to balance a little bit, but at the same time, that commitment that I had was what brought me to where I'm at. I didn't have help. I grew up in a blue collar family. My family's from Trinidad. I'm first generation American. They come from a third world country. I grew up with my dad working at MTA in New York City. Like, he's the only person I was working and commuted 2 hours a day, both ways.
Crazy.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Like, we didn't have much. We shopped at Walmart for like our school clothes, so I can't say that I had this great network of people that could help me learn how to do this, learn about IP specifically. Like, that was tough, man. That still tough. I mean, I get it now. I could be the best with IP stuff, but I can't tell you how hard it was to figure these things out, put yourself out there. That's the biggest thing I would say, is you got to put yourself out there. You got to not care that, like, I had people in college, when I said I wanted to be an inventor, laugh at me. They're like, you're an architect. You didn't go to school for that. And they would laugh. And now I laugh at them. I'm like, look where I'm at now, and then I had coworkers being like, you're wasting all this time doing this. You have a good job. You're doing good at what you do. You could be doing X, Y, and Z. But I just didn't, not that it didn't affect the way I thought about things or didn't make it less difficult, probably made it more difficult, but you just have that commitment, and you just got to know that you're doing this for yourself. You're doing this for your own future. You're not doing this for someone else's future. It's really about your future. It's yours. And you got to commit to it. And if you have a good idea and a good vision in it, and you have a plan that you put together to get there, you just got to go after it. And then that's the only way that you're going to get there. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to do the things you don't want to do.
For sure. No, absolutely. And I mean, I guess it's interesting because a lot of times you see somebody come on, and the great thing about this whole, entrepreneurship and being able to create a product, invent a product, is the fact that you don't have to have that background, have a background in the said
Yep.
thing that you're kind of dealing with. So like you said, you had an architectural background and you're kind of in kind of the sciences, if you will, kind of dealing with that. Or was that something that, again, you said it took you a number of years to be able to kind of understand what's going on? Because again, you're not kind of dealing with an apparatus or a product that, okay, you can kind of figure out maybe a little bit more on the go. This is like science and a little bit more involved. So I guess how was that kind of process, and how did you deal with that? Because that seemed like that was maybe a little bit more of a learning curve than maybe the average inventor or entrepreneur who's going through kind of their situation.
Yeah. I think for me, I was a good student. I got good grades, but I was definitely a D's get degrees in college. And because I got a D in bio my senior year in a freshman class because I just didn't care.
You're better than me. At Michigan State, I went to undergrad as well as law school at Michigan State, and chemistry was a little bit more tolerable.
Yeah, I was like, man, that's not me. Physics is very adjacent to like math, but it was learned. I recently was on something, and they were like, "You're an architect. How did you do this?" And I was like, "It was learned and earned. Like I learned all of this and earned everything that I have. That's all it is. I had to learn it on my own. I didn't have a chance. And don't get me wrong, like we live in the day and age where you can literally learn anything on the internet, absolutely anything. And if you don't take advantage of that, I'm gonna tell you that's on you. You know what I mean? You could literally learn to be a rocket scientist off the internet. Like people do. It's crazy, right? So me learning about how to turn air into water wasn't really that. I'm not saying it was extremely hard, but it was available. The information was there for me to find it. And I just had to know, like, what do I need to learn? Try to make like we all went to school, so we know what a curriculum looks like, right?
Sure.
I made my own curriculum. I was like, all right, this is what I need to learn. This is what I need to study to get there. And I don't know it off the bat, but I'm like, let me start somewhere. You got to just start. And if you start, you'll go down the rabbit hole. It will lead you to where you got to go. You might need to take a step back sometimes and like refocus or redirect yourself, but you're going to learn along the way. So that learning process, and again, I could be with the best in the science field for my expertise now at this point.
Sure.
And the future of this industry, we will be the leader in the future of the industry because of the 5 years I experienced doing experiments and tests on technology that's the future of this industry, not what's current. Even what we have now is just the current. There is a future for this that produces 10 to 100 times more water in the same device with different types of technologies. So I've done that research. I've done those experiments, and that was just me playing the fool, honestly. Like I'd be living in apartments with friends, and when I was working, and I'd be doing experiments in like my kitchen oven, and people would be like, "Are you gonna burn the house down?" I'm like, "Okay, I can't promise anything." You know what I mean? Like of course I was within like bounds of being safe, but I took the risk. I went for it. I did what I had to do, and that learning process was crucial because I learned things that other people just don't know, and I was able to build other parts of my expertise, not just in the science field, but in the business administrative field, the management field, like learning how to work with people, particularly learning how to find the right people, like finding a good IP lawyer is really important because I'll tell you, I've had a bad IP lawyer that's like, oh yeah, I filed it. And 2 years later, I'm like, where's my number? It was like my patent number. Oh, there was a revision that needed to be made and it came back. And I was like, why did you tell me? Oh, I thought I did, but you didn't. And now we're losing our first to file date and stuff like that. So, finding the right people in the right space, especially in IP, is very critical.
No, and I guess maybe you hit on a number of things there in terms of like pulling that back. So going back to your inspiration, because you were saying, and maybe I think that was a good point that I want to also say about just real life learning. I would imagine that even though you didn't necessarily have a science degree, that you have more knowledge than people who actually went to school and got maybe an undergrad or bachelor's and a master's in science, just because the real world experience of kind of doing
Practical
things in real life, which, like you said, that practical experience. But from an inspiration standpoint, I know you said you were studying a beetle, I think, studying a beetle maybe back in college. But what else maybe was going on to say, okay, because I know you said that it also solved your needs. So what else, I guess, was going on with you maybe personally or whatnot to make you think, okay, I got this beetle that I'm kind of looking at, and then I have this other personal need. So this is going to really kind of be the inspiration for me to kind of really go through it and learn everything I need to learn and take the years that I need to learn this stuff to come up with this invention. Because 10 years is a long time. So it seems like that have to be pretty.
Not that old yet. So it's a long part. It's a big part of my life. No, that's a good point. Like I said, the well water thing that I grew up with, that was a problem that I grew up with. And when you think about it, I didn't, I'm going through life not thinking about what all happened in the past and what happened to have these results. So, we had well water, that's great. Oh, we have natural well water from the mountains. We're in Pennsylvania. That's great. But we lived downhill from everybody. So everything in their water went into our well. And we could never fix it because unless we fix their water, we can't fix ours. So we switched to bottled water. And we had no choice, right? We couldn't use the refrigerator. The refrigerator smelled terrible. It smelled like sulfur because it just had bacteria in it. Like the water was coming from the well no matter what we did. Filtered or not, we just didn't trust it anymore. So we switched to bottled water. And that's expensive, especially for a blue-collar family. And it's just, as an architect who studies sustainability, seeing the impact that we had on like how many cases of water we had every day, and then learning that only like 10% of those get recycled and the rest of them end up in landfills or an ocean that float over to some third world country and just pollute their land, and how it can affect that. Like now the microplastics are coming up, but that's a little bit more current. But, learning about that in school and then understanding that the water crisis was a huge thing and it was affecting more people than just myself. I usually like to take myself out of the picture actually and like look at everyone else and like see what's going on in the bigger picture, the grand scheme of things, and what can make a big difference. And, we learned about climate change and blah, blah, blah. And people love to talk about like the, how much carbon's in the sky and blah, 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 the CO2. And people forget that it rains and hurricanes are a result of tons of water vapor in the air. And when there's enough water vapor and it rapidly condenses, that's how a hurricane forms. It's the rapid condensation of a lot of water in the air. CO2 allows the atmosphere to trap more water because it's hotter. Water only condenses when there's a temperature change, right? Like a temperature that condenses it. So if the atmosphere is hotter, the water won't condense. So it doesn't rain as frequently. It'll rain less frequently, but more, and have harsher hurricanes because the air is trapping more water because it can't condense just yet. And when it finally reaches the condensation point, it rapidly condenses and a massive hurricane happens. That's why we're having more hurricanes, because there's more water vapor in the air. I went through an accelerator. That was a clean tech accelerator. And they were talking about CO2 and CO2 emissions and blah, 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 2040 Paris agreements. And I was like, all right, cool. But what about water vapor emissions? Are we going to address that? They're like, oh, well, if we solve CO2, it'll solve the water vapor. I was like, so the immediate issue is the water vapor. It's what causes the hurricanes. The CO2 is a long-term plan to remove, but if you want to stop the big hurricanes, you got to adjust the water vapor emissions. They just brushed it off. So for me, those little things about like just brushing off what I know is an important thing, it kind of pushes me to do it, like go after it even harder and figure it out and like make an impact, because I know it's going to make a difference. So it was all of these points that drove me to be like, this can solve a major problem in the world. Let me really like commit to this and it'll solve my problem. Cool. But again, now that we're in market, I've learned so much about our customers. I flew around the country to visit our customers in the early days, and I learned that, people have worse problems than I did, significantly more worse problems than I did. And that was really interesting to learn and just see how impactful this is. And people say they couldn't live without this product anymore. Like they would be like, they wouldn't know where to drink. They wouldn't trust anything else. It's very cool to know that this has become so many people's like main source of drinking water.
No, yeah, for sure. And again, typically I would go out and have dinner or a cigar or whatever, at least once a week. And it's a plumber who typically goes to the same place I go to, and he only drinks bottled water, and he drinks like glass bottled water. He doesn't even drink it in a plastic bottle. But he's like, man, just all the stuff I done seen is like these water lines. I'm not drinking that crap. Yeah. So it seems like kind of similar to kind of your device, maybe, provides an alternative or a good alternative.
That's exactly what it is. It's an alternative. There's no other alternative besides ground and bottle. So what else can you do? You're stuck, right? So this is the third option that is, one, it just makes water accessible because you don't have to transport it. Like if you live on city water, you don't have to transport it from the Adirondacks up north in, New York. If you're on well water, most people on well water these days know how contaminated with bacteria it is, unless you have like a full home UV light system in your house or something. Yeah. They just don't drink it anymore. I spend a lot of time in China, and I don't know if you know this, but China is the biggest bottled water consumer on the planet. Not a single person in China drinks tap water. Not a single one. It's mind-blowing. Like when I'm talking about how much water bottle they drink, I think the richest person in China owns a bottled water company.
Hey, that'll make sense, especially if they're drinking bottled water and they're not drinking tap water. Yeah. And obviously with the population, I would imagine that they produce a lot of kind of plastic going through those plastic bottled water. So let me ask you, because I had a few questions for you. So I know you were talking about the whole, the water being trapped, I think water vapor in the air. So for an area, I'm in Michigan here, and man, it can get very humid. So it seems like that would be a good atmosphere or whatever to kind of be able to produce water from using your apparatus. Is it a difference, or is it little tougher when you're in maybe an area that has dry heat, such as Arizona, or you still get the same outcome?
No, that's a great question. I love getting this question. And because the technology we have has a wide range of application. It's incredible, actually. We actually considered not selling to Las Vegas, Arizona, and things like that because we just weren't sure it was going to work. We know that in high humidity it'll work. Obviously, that makes sense, just logically. But we had a couple customers that bought, and we shipped them. And, I get phone calls sometimes from customers being like, I am at Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona, at a high of 13% humidity day, and this thing's pumping out water. And then I get a text. Yep, I got a text the other day from the same person saying, I've had the device for a year now, and I've never once run out of water, and I use it every day.
Wow.
Yep, it's incredible. I mean, this thing, and then I had to dig a little deeper. I was like, all right, so let me just see how much water you're using. I was like, how much do you and your family use? He goes, about 3 to 5 liters a day, which is a good amount, right? That's 10 bottles a day of water. And his dog drinks it too. And I was like, all right, cool. Have you ever run out after you guys are done for the end of the day? He's like, no, it's never run out. And you could tell by the level sensor on the screen. I was like, okay, so that means there's at least 1 or 2 more liters in the tank, right? So that means it's producing at least 5 to 7 liters per day, which means at 10 liters per day maximum to 70% efficiency in the desert.
And again, I guess on one end, like you said, this thing, obviously in high humidity areas is probably going to perform the best. But it seems like with kind of the water shortage and things like that going on out west in California, Arizona, that they would, I don't want to say take a chance, but they would definitely be looking to get their hands on it just to kind of see what it can produce to supplement or provide an alternative to, I guess, the lack of water that they have out in those areas. So I guess what about, I typically try to go through 4 or 5 bottles of water a day. I guess how much water, and I obviously I would imagine it would vary depending on where you are, that this thing can produce, that your apparatus can produce.
Yeah, so it's scalable, right? That little beetle produced a couple droplets a day, right? Well, whenever it made the water. And that just sustains itself. Our flagship model Carapure does 10 liters per day, which is equivalent to 20 bottles of water. So a case of water per day. Right?
You can get a family where you can, 20.
That's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Right? That's a lot. So people hear 10, they don't think liters. We don't know liters here. So I try to equate it to, some digestible number of 20 bottles per day, which is a case of water. So that's, and it's scalable. So with, our new product that we're launching, it's 3.2 liters per day, which is 7 bottles of water. But that's a countertop model. It's more for an individual or 1 to 2 people, hotel rooms, whatever. But we can scale. If we can scale down, we can scale up as well. So we can go to virtually any amount of water that we want. Personally, Car Water's main mission is to dominate the indoor space, make drinking water directly accessible to people, both here and in the third world. And so to do that, we're not going to play too much in the commercial space just yet, maybe in 5 years from now. But for the first 5 years, we're going to focus on domestic and indoor space and dominate the indoor space.
So how long does it take to make the water? Is it a number of hours? Is it an hour? You make it overnight? What's the kind of, how do you typically, I would imagine that you get asked that question often. So how do you answer that as far as the duration that it takes to make those?
So over 24 hours, you get 10 liters. So over 24 hours, whatever number we state for our products is what you get. But if you break it down, you can obviously just divide how many liters by 24 hours. So with Carapure, you get 0.4 liters every hour. So it's about a bottle of water every hour, which is significant.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
And then for Carpod, I think it's 0.1 something liters per hour, which is a cup of coffee an hour because it's a coffee machine. So it actually works. It works pretty adjacently.
Nice. So then let me ask you this. So what about all these? Well, how do you answer the questions to the water lovers? Because again, man, it seems like sometimes water can get, I never knew it can be such an intense subject where you got the purified water, you got the spring water, you got
the hydrogen water, you got everything at this point.
Well, I got a buddy who doesn't drink tap water. That's not even that's not even water according to him. But he's still not drinking purified water. It's a very subset of water. I know a lot of people like to drink spring water or alkaline water, for example. So I guess what do you say to those people? Does this machine or apparatus, does it make alkaline water or the spring water? Does it have those same effects or minerals or whatnot that you would get when you're drinking spring or alkaline water?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I went deep into my study of what water is. I'll tell you, I don't have a light water palate. I couldn't Now I have a bit more of a lighter water palette to tell you like that's like store-bought water, or if it's our water, because I only drink our water at this point. So I'm used to it, so now I can tell the difference a bit. Versus like, before I had the device, I would drink whatever. It didn't matter. It could be whatever brand or whatever it was that someone gave me. Yeah. So when we created the water profile, I was living in London at the time, and I was traveling a lot, so I got to just try a bunch of different things. And I was going a lot. I lived in London, so I went through Europe a lot. And in Europe, you have the Alps, so you always have really clean water that you drink from the tap. And when I went to Iceland, I drank the tap water. It smells like sulfur because you have a high sulfur content in the springs, like the hot springs there. But the water also has, you know how the Iceland water, when you see pictures, is really blue, like a light blue? That's the silica. So there's a high silica content in the water. Beer has a high silica content, which is what makes it smooth. So when you drink water that has high silica, it's very smooth. So when I was looking at this, I was like, all right, so the top brand at the time was like Fiji. And like, then I was like, I like Icelandic water. I think it's a very unique profile. And then when I was looking at alkaline, because we found from customer feedback that alkaline was the thing that people wanted most. And then you look at Essentia, which is 9.5 pH, right? Then you learn there's two different types of alkaline, artificial and natural. Artificial is like a fake way of like you introduce electricity into the water, you split the molecules of hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen then makes it alkaline because it's a positive molecule. The natural alkaline is like a river running over rocks, picking up minerals, and it becomes naturally alkaline through those minerals. We do natural alkaline, which is the cool part. So the minerals is step one. You get all these really rich minerals in our water, 7 unique minerals, and then those minerals are alkaline minerals. So they increase the alkalinity of the water to 9.2. So we have like a filter that has little ceramic balls that are coated in these minerals, and as you run the water through it, once we make the water, it's extremely pure. It's like 6 ppm, which is distilled. And then we add minerals back into it as we run the water through this mineral filter, and it goes up to between 170 to 210 ppm. So that's so many more minerals that you're adding back into the water. So it's very high quality water. It's pretty much the sum of Fiji water, Icelandic water, and Essentia all in one, glass of water.
Nice. Yeah. And I was going to say, like I said, my buddy, he's kind of put me into this whole water thing. So I'm kind of getting more hip as far as different types of water. I guess I maybe didn't appreciate the fact that even though you have, I guess the alkaline water or, the mineral water, you can have natural minerals and then artificial. Yep. But I mean, that makes total sense. I know Fiji, like you said, is a popular brand, and it seems like maybe from my understanding, that's more of a natural.
Medicine well that has natural minerals. But again, just to like touch on that point, you got to fly that thing over 2,000 miles everywhere it goes.
Right.
Why?
Exactly.
Why do that? You know what I mean? We could recreate that right here. And my whole thing these days is drink locally sourced water, with our products.
And that makes perfect sense. So then, I guess, how much pushbacks do you get regarding the price? Because it seems like, I think I maybe saw it was maybe $5,000, and it seems like even at that price for what you get, I would imagine that this thing is going to last for a number of years, and just the health, the benefits of the water, like you said, the mineral water that we just went through that your machine is making, so that you can drink, and again, 10 bottles a day, or 20 bottles a day, and being able to do that year after year after year for a number of years. It seems like $5,000 that's almost whatever. That's not even a big thing. We're going to pay that absolutely, because I guess the benefit that we're getting, it definitely outweighs any costs associated with it. But do the customers, do they kind of push back on that, or have you had a lot of pushback on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the customers who purchase it, they have a little more free cash, Yeah. The customers who have a little more cash sensitive, they don't push back per se. But at the end of the day, it's a very high quality product. It's stainless steel inside and out. There's no plastic inside there. So if you look on the inside, it's all stainless steel. The outside stainless steel. To make that shell the way that it is, you need an automotive factory that presses like big panels of metal. Yep. So that's an expensive piece. The exterior is the most expensive part of this design. It's one giant sheet of metal that you press. And I don't know if you know this, but as you press metal at that force, if the metal's not fully secured, it will tear like paper because there's so much force. And this is thick metal. It'll tear just like paper. So that process took us a year to perfect, just to get that opening the way that it is. We've had factories turn us down because they couldn't do it. They're like, no, you have to split it in two, make it out of plastic, or do a plastic mold instead. It's like, nope, not doing it.
Right.
So we were very keen on that. So the product itself is very expensive. It's big, so it's expensive to ship. It both overseas and last mile is both expensive. So all of the cost that's added into it, we still get a good margin. Don't get me wrong, but that's because we know what we're selling is a good product, and we know that what we're selling is technically a water system. It's not just it's not a bottle of water. It's like a home water system that you're drinking from.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And it's consistent.
Which I would imagine is not obviously different, but better than, you just buying a water purifier and hooking that up to your tap water, or, figuring out whatever, trying to drink purified water. This is a completely different ball game that's just head and shoulders different, as well as better.
But I'll tell you, we do know that, look, my goal is to make this accessible. Again, our mission is to make drinking water locally accessible through our technology. And that's why we introduced our new product, and it's extremely differently priced.
No, yeah, and I guess maybe kind of going off of those same lines in terms of affordability, I kind of looking at when you guys launched 800 units sold across 44 different countries, which is crazy because it's not just a U.S. thing, but a lot of other countries. I would imagine a lot in Europe. I would imagine even in China are buying this thing up like hotcakes. So I guess with some of those third world countries, I know you said your parents are from a third world country, and then you have some countries out in Africa. Do you get called a lot from those countries looking to try to figure out a way to get this system or this apparatus into their hands?
Yeah, we actually we just delivered 5 units to Sierra Leone to an orphanage, and we're working with this guy who has a foundation who has a really cool business model where he just goes, develops like a village, makes it to a point where the kids have everything they need around the school, so they stay in school, like the soccer fields, the whatever they need around it, the schools, so they're there to keep them in school. And then he moves on to the next one. He keeps doing this. And I was like, that's really beautiful. So he just dropped off a couple units to Sierra Leone, and that's going to supply water for the orphanages in the town that he's currently working in.
And, man, and that's amazing because, I mean, obviously, I've never been. Hopefully, sometime soon, I'm able to go to Africa and kind of go to the different countries. But it seems like, man, the things that they have to do just for a bottle of water, I know we take it for granted here in the U.S. where we can just turn on the tap water or go down the street and buy a case of water, whatever the case may be. I'm not sure. I would imagine that it seems like in some villages or some parts, they have to walk long distances just to be able to retrieve water, which just kind of sounds unthinkable here in a first world country such as America, where it's kind of water at our, I guess, whenever we want it.
Yeah, it's unsafe. It's mainly women who do it. Yeah. And the worst part is that these women don't get the time to receive an education because they're working for the house so much. So a lot of our conversations with people is that this is a lot for women in third world countries. When we get to that point and we're working on things like that, it's going to allow women to stay in school, and not even to stay in school, go to school.
Right. So so I want to transition a little bit to the IP side of things. I know you brought it up a little bit, and you said you knew a ton of things, or you learned a ton of things going through the process with having a bad IP attorney and a good IP attorney. And I guess maybe before getting into like the patents, and I would imagine that, cause I worked on a patent for a burger, like an automatic burger machine a number of years ago, and we had like a patent on the entire, like the overall system. But then, I mean, something like this, I would imagine that it has a number of subcomponents within it, so that you have patents on the subcomponents or the subsystems, as well as maybe the overall system. It seems like that may be the case with your device. But I guess what happened with the bad patent attorney who was supposed to file the patent and didn't? And I guess because that's crazy to think, as me being a patent attorney, that I don't want to say
it's still a process. I'll be honest with you. We're transitioning out to a new IP lawyer, which has been great, and it was just you get what you pay for. Yeah. I guess that's what it comes down to, right? I'm not going to say he's like a bad IP lawyer. I just think he wasn't very communicative, and that lack of communication led to delays and potential, misfilings and and lost IP opportunities, which is really bad for a company, right?
Yeah, and again, I don't like to throw especially an attorney, under the bus, because I understand kind of dealing with multiple things and whatever the case may be. But
we're a smaller client. We were a smaller client of his, things like that.
Right. But then, like you said, those filing dates become important because, and it can affect your rights, not only within the U.S., but especially for a product like yours, which is being sold all over the world. It can affect you being able to protect your invention in other countries as well. So we're held to a high standard as it relates to those filing deadlines because they are important. Yep. I know recently, last year I had to work on trying to. It was a again going back to the attorney where he maybe didn't file something and the invention, the patent application would abandon, and it had been abandoned for over 2 years. And for those who don't know anything about like the U.S. patent, at least the U.S. patent law system, it's a little easier to get a patent revived when it's less than 2 years, but it's extremely difficult when that patent has been abandoned for more than 2 years. And I think theirs was like 5 years, and I had to go through a number of back and forth with the USPTO, but we ultimately got their patent application revived, which I mean they were extremely thankful. But man, this stuff can have a big impact, especially when we're talking about getting investments and being able to potentially sell the company or whatever the case may be. They want to see that this IP is protected. So I mean, it seems like you guys are kind of getting back on the right track with that, which that's good to hear, especially as a patent attorney who's kind of dealt with.
We had the same thing. We had a patent that was that needed to be revived, and it never should have gotten to that point. That's the thing, right? And I was very communicative, and the worst part was I reached out to them on a frequent basis and never really got anything back, being more like the I'm working on it thing, and I'll get back to you, and I'll have it to you this day, I'll have it to you this day, and then just kicking the ball down the track. But now that we're in a different place in our business, we have a little more cash flow, we're a little bit bigger than we used to be. We have another patent lawyer, and I'll be honest with you, he's not that much more expensive, but he's experienced in this field.
Okay.
My specific field. So and the work he's done for us has been incredible. I mean, the turnaround time, the detail that he's built in, it's not even, we did a provisional with him just to start, but it's the level of detail he did was already halfway through to utility.
Yep.
Which was fantastic. So now when we do the utility at the end of this year, that's going to be, there's only going to be half the work done. His costs are great. I mean, the costs are what they should be. I understand what that's important now, right? Don't skimp out on the things that are very important to your business. IP is, we're raising funds now, and I get we get the question all the time, like, where's your IP? What's your IP? What's your IP? What's your IP? Oh. And if you don't have a good answer for that, you're not getting the investment. I'll tell you that much. It's very hard. And again, if you're exiting, people are buying either your brand or your intellectual property, right? So if you build both, that's great. But if you don't have one or the other, then you're not going to have pretty much anything to sell. People are like, oh, it's making myself, right?
Yep.
So having a good IP lawyer, and I know that a lot of people want to dive into IP strategy like really fast and like, I want 25 patents tomorrow. You don't need to just yet. Get your foundation built.
Yep.
Work on the strategy. You know what you want to work on, but by the time you get there, it's probably gonna be something different. So, do what you need, do it exactly when you need it, right before. So we have the new product coming out. We patented the whole thing and like bunch of features and sub claims and whatnot. That was because we knew we were announcing it. So we went into it because you only have a year, right, for the provisional. So you got to be careful about your timing. And if you're not ready to file yet, don't. You can talk about it. I think people are wary about talking about their ideas to people because like, oh, they might steal it. I'm like, it's not that easy to steal someone's idea, especially some Joe Small off the street. You know what I mean? If you just talk to strangers or whomever, even if you talk to investors, they don't have the time to go steal your technology. And plus other people are talking to them. That's not what they're in the business for. So I think one of the things people are afraid of is they're unable to get to the IP stage because they don't have the traction in their business because they're too afraid to talk about it.
For sure.
The first step is to talk about it to people, right? Get the validation that this is something people need or want, and then work towards getting to a point where you are like, all right, cool, I'm ready to launch this in like 6 months. Let me go do my IP. Right. No. Talk to your IP lawyers before that, get them everything lined up, but there's a strategy to it.
No, yeah, absolutely. And you definitely need that feedback. And I always say as a patent attorney that you don't want to kind of give the details of how you're doing something, obviously, but like you said, you need that feedback to kind of validate what it is that you're doing and whether or not maybe it's need for it or people get excited about it, and just kind of keep it at a very high level. And like, okay, maybe it's something here. And then, like you said, you're not disclosing the details of the secret sauce, if you will, of how you're doing it to those people so that you can kind of keep that separate. So now that's cool. So did you always know, because again, I understand you had an architectural background, and did you know kind of going into this thing that, and obviously it seemed like you knew that IP was important, but did you know the process as far as kind of what all it entailed, or is that something that you learned kind of throughout the process? Because I believe that's another aspect that's kind of holding people back is they just don't know what they don't know. And again, it's one
Yeah.
thing if you're dealing with corporate, and corporate has their big attorneys, that outside counsel, whatever that you're dealing with. But when you're kind of Joe Blow off the street and you have no idea about IP and the process and the steps and the, I guess, all that it entails, it can be overwhelming to the point where you're like, man, I'm not even going to think about protecting my invention or creating a business based off this product or invention.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was a legal Zoom IP person to start, but you know, we all know that that's not the right way to go. But you try.
Right. Oh, and it's a part of like this kind of process, just being able to kind of, at least, especially when we get off.
It'll walk you through like the process, at least, you know what I mean? So you at least get an understanding. You may not need to do it with LegalZoom, but at least walk you through the process. Then you can choose to file it, you know? But even then, if you file, you're like, you're not going to get the grant or whatever, but because it's just not correct. And then going through any revisions is going to make it very tough for you without an IP lawyer.
Yep. Exactly. Now, because you definitely need, like you said, that detail. And a good IP attorney, they're going to, first of all, hopefully you have an IP attorney who communicates with you, because that's a big thing, it seems like these days. But if, to the extent that you have an IP attorney that communicates with you, just having a good IP attorney who knows what they're doing, they're going to draft you a good application. Because even if you file a provisional and everything is not in there, when you go to convert it to a non-provisional, then I guess the priority date that you get, you got a priority date, but is it for the stuff that you need it to be for?
Exactly.
That's one of the
right. How much did you change, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Disclosing that provisional. So
yeah, I think one of the big hurdles for me in the early days of trying to file IP was we are hardware, so the drawings. I'm an architect, so the drawings weren't hard, but they're very specific on how you draw them for patents. It's not an architectural drawing. There's no shading. There's none of that. Blah blah blah. And I'm lucky enough to know CAD, so I can do the CAD drawings. Where that in itself is a hurdle for most people if you're hardware to get the CAD drawings done. You can try to draw it. Don't get me wrong. You can get someone from Fiverr any day to draw your provisional drawings if you needed to. But again, you have to know what you want if you're going to go freelance. Yep. But if you have an IP lawyer that can help you with that, at least give you the guidance, that's good. The first lawyer did give me the guidance, and we did file a design patent with him, and that went through like a week ago. When that was 5 years ago, we filed that.
Really?
Yeah, that's the one we got through. It was crazy.
Design patent.
Yeah. So he's like, yeah, it could take up to 4 years to get your grant, to get it granted. And I was like, okay, I understand that, but that doesn't sound super right, you know?
4 years. I mean, maybe for utility, and even 4 years, maybe a long time for utility. I would probably say it's going to get picked up in a year and a half, 18 months, and maybe 2 to 3 years. Well,
it was, again, this is where we had to revive it, and because a revision wasn't made that needed to be done with like the shading or something, and it was never communicated, blah, blah, blah. So that was just a very interesting process, but that was one of the minor hurdles. Even if I had the architectural background, the drawings, because they're very specific to IP, was tough. So, I wouldn't you shouldn't let any of that stop you, but knowing where the hurdles are to go seek advice on that is what you need to know. To be like, you can at least try, and then you go find advice. And honestly, like, people just like you will give advice. They'll tell you like, hey, this is what you need to work on. You're not going to do it for them. Like, do the actual work, but you can help. I think people are afraid to go ask for the advice because they're afraid to talk about it.
And you bring up a good point. So I'm actually helping a lady right now go through the process. And like you said, I'm giving her the advice, but she has to do the work. And when she's ready to draft the patent application, then I will draft it. But again, to your point about the whole Fiverr thing, I would have never told her to go to Fiverr for a draft. I would say, hey, go look locally on draftsmen in your area who have experience with drawings. And so that's just another tip that an attorney would give you, or would give somebody. Hey, go to a draftsman who has worked on patent drawings and know what the USPTO is, what you need to provide to your attorney, and that's going to be better off going from Fiverr, who people who never worked on patent drawings and don't know the formal requirements that's required. So yeah, I think
especially in local country, right? Like, they might be from some other country too.
Yep, for sure, exactly. Yep, another good point. How many patents do you have on something like this?
We have, I think,
or at least applications maybe pending, and
3 or 4 now. We have a couple trademarks, and then we do have our IP strategy now. So we have, our 10 or 15 more that we're going to do over time.
Nice.
So the Carapure has, at least it has design patents and has a technology patent. Carapod has a technology patent. We're doing 2 technology patents for that one. The one that we just filed is extremely robust, and that's going to be like our golden egg, I think, which is great. And then we have a ton more to file for Carapure. The thing is, like I said, you don't need to do it all at once. You just don't. You shouldn't, and you don't have to, because it's going to change. Like, I'll tell you, a lot of the stuff on the inside of this device will change, and that's going to change how the patent would work. Yeah. So instead of filing it now and then having a patent that has no relevance anymore, file what you need, know what you need, right? My brand is my strong point. My IP is not my strong point. It's because it's a good technology, but we're selling a brand, right? Like, I'm an architect that designs what people buy. So the brand protection for me was more important. So the design patent we focused on first and really lock that in there, get that done. We have patents that we're going to file for the process. I don't know if one thing I learned that most people don't know in the IP world is that you don't need to file a patent on the product. You can file a patent on the process. So how I make the product, how I make that shape, I can file a patent on the tool for it. That's an important part of the process, so somebody can't replicate it in that way, right? So if I file a patent on the process, that's also a way to protect yourself. And that is actually sometimes how people protect themselves more often than not, actually, on the process of the manufacturing, the assembly of it. Absolutely. Or like the machine they make to assemble it, not the actual product. And that is also another strategy for IP.
No, for sure. No, you're giving some jewels now in terms of, like you said, IP strategy and protecting or preventing maybe a manufacturer from making it or kind of selling it because you're protecting the process, and maybe downline, it may get sold by a wholesaler or a retail, and that's maybe more so protecting the product and kind of preventing that from happening. But absolutely, the method claims, and you have a combination of where a lot of times you try to fit that into one application, but a lot of times they end up breaking it out and making you do a continuation or divisional application where one patent kind of protects just the method claims and the other patent protects the apparatus claims. So no, that's good stuff. It seems like you definitely have a good attorney on your hands and kind of going about things the right way. And again, Dr. Dave Smith, I know I brought him up earlier with the woodpecker thing. He said it as well. Like, hey, if you go to investors and things like that and you can't protect that IP, then you're probably not going to get funding. So it seems like you maybe kind of said a similar thing earlier on. And I had interviewed, name's escaping me. Like Mike McFarland, he's the co-CEO of Big B Coffee, which is a coffee company. It started here in Michigan area. They have like 400 locations. They do like $250 million a year in annual revenue. And he talks about going from the branding standpoint. They have a number of trademarks where they have one company that just operates the business and one company that owns all the trademark or the IP. And that operating company pays the company that owns the IP, like I think he said 10% a year, so like $25 million a year, and that kind of gives more credibility to the IP as well. Yep. So it's from a strategy.
I mean, you eventually build an arsenal, right? You build like this warehouse of IP. I think like Apple tried to patent the curve of their screen, and then they got sued for it because it was just out. You eventually start to get outrageous because you can, but at this stage where we're at, we're still in the startup stage. I'm not saying that we have all this cash flow to do all that, but we are at a stage where we do have to be very cognizant of like, what are we trying to patent and why? Instead of trying to do too much. I think there was a guy who like wrote songs and he trademarked like 7,000 of them. I was like, and they weren't even like songs. They were just things he wrote down. And he was afraid of people stealing his songs. So he trademarked or whatever, he copyrighted all of them.
Copyrighted them, yep.
And it was just really funny. I was like, that's fear at that point. You're just getting out of control and you're never going to share this because you're still afraid that someone's going to take it from you because you didn't copyright it, right? So half of it is just going out there and putting yourself out there. The other half is, knowing what you need to protect and then protect that, right?
Yeah. And again, a big part of that is just having a good attorney and who can kind of sit down
and they'll walk you through it. Yeah,
for sure. Now, I guess maybe as we kind of wrap up and asking a few final questions here, what do you think was the biggest breakthrough with the product and with Carapure Water? Because I know, man, you kind of been all over with this thing. I think you have in the background the Times Magazine Best Inventions of 2022, which is huge. You have the CES Consumer Electronics Show, which is every year in Vegas in January. You had that award in 2023. So just last year, you were on the NBC Today Show. So, man, if you've been around, have a number of accolades with your company, with your product, what do you think was the biggest breakthrough to get over that hump where you really kind of start seeing things pick up? Or was it just the fact that people were kind of showing it organically? Because I know shortly after launching, you over $1 million in sales. And so was it maybe some organic views, some organic advertisement, or is it maybe going or winning one of these awards? What do you think was one of the big breakthroughs early on for you and your company?
Yeah, so all the awards came after the success, right? I always say, like, on social media, you can have someone who has 1 million followers who's an artist, and honestly, I might think their art sucks. And then somebody can have 10 followers and they have like the most amazing art in the world, right? But the only difference is that person with 10 followers doesn't put their art out there. They don't show people. And if you don't get it in front of the right people, you're not going to ever be found, right? You know, like how agents like, oh, I found this actor, like I found them, right? Or this artist or whatever. It really is that. So we launched with crowdfunding, and it's something I've always wanted to do on like Kickstarter, Indiegogo. We did Indiegogo. And it's something I always wanted to do because I also was cool. Like I like the virality of it. I like the audience size they have is great. Like they're all tech enthusiasts. They're all early adopters. They're all people who know they're supporting something. They're in there to support it, not just to get like a product that solves a problem for them, which at the end of the day, it does because we're niche, we're new. So like this is a problem. I have a problem that there's probably nothing out there. Let me see if there's some new technologies that are coming out that can solve it. So this is the platform for that. So people are already there looking. And I'm a big believer in learning from other people's mistakes, learning from other people's experiences and talking to people. And we talked to a lot of other founders who did Indiegogo or crowdfunding to start and learned a lot of great information. One was you need a big email list. So if you're going to do performance marketing, it's not to sell, it's to lead generate. So lead generation was big. The other part was you need an agency. You need a marketing agency. If you try to do it on your own, the lift is way too heavy for the small team that you may have, may just be you. So we found an agency that was success-based. So we didn't pay them until we finished, and they only get a percentage of it, right? So we found what worked for us. If you have a little bit of bigger of a budget, you can go with some other agency, things like that. But it's all about generating an audience, right? Those guys worked on generating an audience for us. They did pre-launch stuff. They did lead generation, performance marketing for us prior to even launching to generate a list of like 3,500 more leads that were pre-ordered, essentially. They put a down payment down, and a big percentage of those people converted on day one. I think we hit our $10,000 goal in 45 minutes, which was great. Yeah. So we put a lot of work in the foundation building of the product and the company to get where we were when we launched. I mean, I like to say I worked 10 years on this to be successful overnight, you know?
That's typically how it happens. Overnight success, but it's like a long time coming or a long time in the making. I guess I heard of Kickstarter, but you said Indiegogo is it the other one?
Yeah. Kickstarter is the original, and at the time when we launched, it was during COVID. We launched during COVID, so I can't even tell you like it was easier. Like it was hard, especially manufacturing a hardware product. Indiegogo at the time was more hardware focused, and Kickstarter at the time was like games and books and stories and movies. I was like, yeah, that's not really for us, not the platform at the moment.
Yeah. No, I had to kind of take note of that. Because I know, and again, similar to what you're saying, TP Tweets, there's like a luxury toilet paper roll, so you don't have that kind of stick in a pole that you see maybe on in bathrooms or whatnot. Kind of give more of a luxury feel. And I had her on a number of months back, and she was on Kickstarter, had a Kickstarter campaign, but she talked about hiring a good advertising agency to help her through the process, make sure when she launched, she hits her goal pretty quickly, sooner rather than later. So all this stuff is, again, it's good when you're hearing these things over and over again because it's like...
Yeah, anyone who's successful, I mean, look, you'll have the 1 or 2 people who've been able to do it on their own, but 9 out of 10 people or 99 out of 100 people will tell you that you need a good agency and a big email list.
Nice. So again, I guess the last and final 2 questions, new product. So we talked about a little bit about the Carapure. Can you explain that? Because I maybe didn't think... I drink coffee, but it's more so going to the coffee places and drink them.
Sure.
And getting a cup. Now, I probably wouldn't say I'm even a coffee drinker. I get lattes and stuff, and I do that more so because I like the taste of it more so than I need the caffeine. But I have a buddy best friend who stays out in Colorado, and I kind of visit him often. I was just out there a couple months ago, and he has this kind of pod, and I didn't realize the having to fill the water in every so often. So it seems like this Carapure kind of helps out with that. Is that correct?
At the end of the day, we're a water company. Everything we do is going to be a drinking water product. So Carapure is initially a drinking water product that makes up to 7 bottles of water per day. That water water is the foundation of anything. It's the foundation of soda. It's the foundation of coffee. It's the foundation of tea. It's the foundation of flavored water. If anything you can think of, it's the foundation of, right? So when we were like, what can we do that's like a cool way to expand our audience, expand our recurring revenue as well for pods, and then what can we do to launch a low-cost product that's more our mass market product? So we came up with this concept of consumable like 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, that's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It's not our technology. It's not our product. And it's going to be really hard to make a pod-based coffee machine. But as I went through the process and learned with it and worked with my engineers, I just got more and more excited about the concept of it. I know that, and especially when you look at the crowdfunding space these days, everyone's doing a coffee machine. Every single person you can think of is doing a coffee machine. But we're innovative. Like when we launched this at CES, we got lots of interviews, big TV stations, these media outlets came and interviewed us. And I would always say, there hasn't been innovation in the coffee machine space since the K-Cup, since the pod. Yeah. I was like, we're going to change that. We're adding a brand new technology to this. That's our technology. That's going to revolutionize, disrupt this entire space. We're going to have everyone coming at us to be like, how can we do this? We have a self-filling coffee machine that you don't need to fill yourself. Right. Hospitality would be great, right? That's one of the things I hate doing at the hotels, because I feel like it's dirty. I don't know why. I feel like I hate putting the water in those coffee machines at a hotel. I feel like somebody might have put something else in there that feels kind of weird, So we're going to be able to revolutionize that space. And we also want to make a mass market model. So to be able to do mass market, we needed the consumables, like the aftermarket sales, to be able to bring the price down. And so like I said, it's dual purpose. It's drinking water and coffee. So typically you buy those separate. You buy cases of water, or you buy a coffee machine, or you go out and buy coffee. And most people have coffee machines, but they don't maintain them. So they either scale or they don't fill it. They don't fill it with water. The biggest thing that people do is don't fill it. So they're rushing out the door, busy people like you and I, and like, all right, instead of me taking the time to fill my coffee machine, I'll go buy an $8 Starbucks.
Yeah, for sure.
So instead of buying the $8 Starbucks, if your water is already there and you got to pop a pot in, you're likely to drink coffee at home and save you $8, $9, right? A day. So that's one of the things that we're focusing on to revolutionize that space, make it more accessible, make it an easier ergonomic experience for getting coffee at home. But also, you also have water. So if you have a small apartment, Carapure is a little big for small apartments, and we want to focus on urban areas. We've had people in like Brooklyn be like, it's a little bit big for my apartment. Do you have something smaller? And we had that. People say that to us all the time. So we knew we needed to go countertop. People are like, you should go bigger, make more water, make a commercial thing. I was like, no, there's more value in a person's home than one purchase for a giant building. You know what I mean? And the amount of work to do that one purchase is unreal. So we wanted to make this accessible. So with Carapod, that's what we've done. We've made it a countertop. We've added a really cool feature, which is the consumables for pods. But again, it's water. It's the foundation of a lot of things. So we can go outside of coffee, and we plan to, right? And funny you mentioned the coffee brand. I'd love to talk to them because we're looking for brand partnerships. That would be great to launch that coffee machine.
Yeah,
so we're always in the market for it.
Yeah, now I'll have to reach out to Mike McFarland, because that seems like that's perfect. Because like you said, you guys are a water company. You guys aren't necessarily a coffee company. Us, and obviously they're a coffee company, so it seems like
so we want to get good brands. They get to use we're sustainable. The pods that we're going to use are hyper sustainable. They're compostable. You can literally throw it in your garden. And I have a birds of paradise flower in my house that I've had for like 8 years and it's never bloomed. And they'd say put coffee in it, so I can just take my pods now and just throw it in there, and the coffee grounds actually help it to bloom. Nice.
So have those pods came out yet? Did they?
Yeah, we haven't even announced the pods yet. So we know people know that we're making pods and they're sustainable. I haven't announced the type of pod it is. We'll be the first to market with this type of pod.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't kind of.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah,
No, that's cool. So, no, it'll be that's going to be great. So definitely, audience members, be on the lookout for that, because I would imagine that's going to break the internet with that probably once it launches. So I'm definitely excited to. When that comes out. So I guess the last question, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? I know we talked a lot about today as far as your background being architectural, and then just kind of learning a lot about biomimicry and kind of taking you on a journey of kind of creating a water company and having some amazing water products. And we talked also about the IP side of things and really not knowing anything, starting with LegalZoom and kind of just educating yourself, going through I want to say bad IP attorneys, but going through challenging time with the IP attorney, and ultimately seems like getting a new one who's kind of really on things for you. So again, you have been through a lot, which is cool, and you've came out of it as have a successful company and things like that. So I think you're definitely qualified to be able to give entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs advice on I guess kind of maybe some things to do or look out for or don't listen to as they're going through their journey. So can you maybe share some of that with the audience as we wrap up here?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, I don't think I think because I've been through so much with this business, the ups and downs, and the saying of hardware is hard. It is a hard space to be in. We're the black sheep everywhere we go. It's always a SaaS platform or some finance platform or whatever, some software platform that we're competing against. Like I said when we opened, it's just a commitment to what you're doing. If you know it's a good idea, one, go make sure it's a good idea. Find the reason for it, not just through talking to people, but go do your research. Go find out like what's the market size for this? What's the problem you're trying to solve, and how much is that problem worth in the value market, right? And I always say drinking water is a humanitarian thing. It is. It's what I got into it for. It was a solved problem that I was facing, and it was a humanitarian problem, so I wanted to solve it. And I wanted to be nonprofit. I wanted to just help people, but going outside of what just is saying that I came up with, I always say that purpose drives profit. So my purpose was strong enough that it drove a profit. People are focused on profit first, but if you have a strong enough purpose, you'll drive that profit. So I don't think about the money in the business and how much we're making, blah, blah. Of course, you need to know those numbers, but that's not my driving force. My driving force is get this into as many people's hands as I can, because that's serving people water, and we're offsetting plastic bottles. We've offset almost 2 million bottles already, which is unreal to think about. Almost 2 million plastic bottles have been offset with our technology, and we're just growing. Every 16 seconds, we offset a bottle. It's crazy. It's amazing to even be able to have that type of number these days. So having that purpose behind what you're doing, being very driven behind it, it'll get you through a lot of the ups and downs. I'll tell you, we'll have the ups and downs for sure. No matter what you do, you're going to have those moments you're like, this doesn't work, this won't work, this can't work. Like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like, I was constantly in the I don't know what I'm doing space. And you just keep going. You'll eventually have the light bulb moment that hits, and you'll get past that hurdle. You'll keep moving, and you'll get to the point where you are like, all right, this is a good idea. But finally, at the end of the day, like, build a team. I always tell people, you don't know everything, but you can have a team that does, for sure. Build a good team, have a good strategy. Look, people want to retain 100% of their company all the time, but that's not fair. If you do that, you might get far if you're lucky, but if you want to have good people that are going to stick with you and they're going to be committed to your dream, not theirs. Remember that. It's not their dream, it's yours that they're now committed to. You got to give them a reason to do so. I mean, I have team members on my team from 7 years now, right? And we didn't launch until 3 years ago.
Nice.
So they were with me for 4 years of the hard time, So they are committed because they're part of the company. They own a bit of it. Like, they have a sense of ownership. Give people that opportunity. Otherwise, you're going to be on your own. And it's very hard to do it on your own. So it's the same thing with finding advice, like talking to David and being like, hey, I need some IP advice. How do I go about this? You may not actually do the IP right now, but you have an idea. You have a direction now. Getting the direction, because you're walking blind most of the time, getting the help, asking for assistance. People are like too big of an ego sometimes and they forget that it's not about your ego, it's about the purpose. So keep your orientation on the purpose of it, and then it'll get you pretty far.
Nice. No, I love that. And I guess maybe as a follow-up question, as you were kind of talking through there, if you knew back then what you know now in terms of the things that you had to go through, would you have still made that decision? I guess that's an interesting question.
To build this company? I mean, I think I would have done it like 7 years faster, maybe more, but oh yeah.
I'm talking in terms of like the ups and the downs, because I know, like you said, you know a ton more now than what you did back then, and I would imagine just that information, that information, you would have been able to, like you said, build it a lot faster. But in terms of like the ups and the downs and kind of going through those cycles, do you think it would have still been worth it, just if you had to do it all over again, based on what you know now?
Yeah, I would say from two perspectives, from the experience perspective and the maturity perspective. I was a kid. I was 20 when I started thinking about this. When I was in college, my second year, 19 actually. I was 19, yeah. I was 19 when I started thinking about this, when I learned about that beetle. And then I didn't hit anything until 28. Like, we didn't have any success until 28, so 29 almost. And a lot of that time I had to learn about my career. I had to learn about what managing is, and I had management position in my old firm. So I learned a lot on the side of like what it means to run a business. And the second side is you're going to mature a bit. So that time for me was great to mature, to understand I'm the youngest on my team, I would say. My team and my partners are a lot older than me. So being able to be a leader that's 20 years younger than your business partners took a lot of maturity. So I wouldn't trade that. I would trade some of it to be like, I could have done some things faster, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I could have shortened that time to gain the same experience. But at the end of the day, no matter what you do, all of those experiences have led me to what not to do and what to do. Right. So I learned a lot of the not to do's, and that's gonna help me in my future, because I'll just avoid that situation because I've done something similar. The opportunity cost was a lot less back then, right? So the opportunity cost now is huge. If I make a mistake on a grand scale now, it can really cost a lot. But I made the mistake on a small scale back then. So it's not a big cost. I'm glad I made those mistakes back then and that I can identify them now that I won't make them again. So I wouldn't trade that part. That part of the experience is invaluable.
No, absolutely. And I would also think maybe that just kind of just the process, being able to enjoy that process. It seems like you were able to travel a lot, just being able to get those testimonials from people saying, hey, you're effectively changing their lives with your product. It's still kind of amazing to me for you to have an ideal in your head and kind of actually turn it into a product to the point where people are buying it. That's still an amazing thing for me. And it seems like just kind of through your journey, you've been able to kind of experience a lot of cool things along the way with traveling and kind of hearing from people and really impacting people's lives. So it seems like that along as well is always something that it seems like kind of inventors or entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's a rewarding thing, man. At the end of the day, it's very rewarding. I try to compare it to like teachers or whatever, but it's a very rewarding process to be able to put something out into the world that people love and enjoy. And not just, rewarding to see that. It's rewarding to see them use it and enjoy it, but it's also rewarding to know that you did something that people like,
Sure. Yep. Oh, that's cool. So how can people get in touch with you? Your social medias? Can they just go to the website, or just people not only just get in touch with you, but how can people follow you, follow what you're doing, follow Carapure Water, see what's on the horizon with the new product? Can you kind of maybe and we'll put also these social media handles and websites and things like that in the description once the video comes out, so that people can access them there. But I guess just for people listening,
yeah, sure. So my social handles, my Instagram is codyswork.inprogress. But for any of our company socials, it's Carwater Inc. at Carwater Inc. for pretty much anything. Facebook, Instagram, you'll find us there, LinkedIn, all of that. Website, www.carwater.com with a K. And for the new product, if you want to check it out, we have a different website because it was kind of like incognito mode for a while as we were doing beta testing. It's carapod.com, so KARApod.com. And then lastly, we are running a live investment campaign that retail investors can get into. So you don't have to be accredited, and you become a part of the journey and help support our mission to make drinking water locally accessible. And you can find that at Start Engine, like start your car, startengine.com/offering/Carawater.
Nice. So definitely, audience, go check out to see everything at Carapure Water, man. They're definitely going to be. I do these Shark Tank breakdown episodes, and I guess you talked about the market, and so when I'm kind of giving my real time thoughts to these Shark Tank pitches, I say 3 things that I'm looking for is simple, the how effective it is, and then the market, because obviously the bigger the market, the more opportunity you stand to make money. But another thing I think about, or I say as well, or kind of give my opinion on what company's going to be around for the next 10, 15, 20 years, as opposed to just maybe a quick 2 or 3 years and make some money and then they're no longer around. I definitely think you guys will definitely be around for a long time just with the products, and like you said, that just the market size with, I don't know, being a water company. So it's excited to kind of pay attention and kind of see what you guys are doing from time to time. Definitely hope to have you back at some point as you guys are creating more products and putting them out to the world. So again, audience, definitely go check out what Cody and the team has over there at Carapure Water, and hopefully you enjoyed this one, because I definitely did, and he gave some good jewels. So until next time, audience, take care.